Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mind Blown Zone podcast, episode 46. This one is called Axioms of Natural Law. Here with Brad. How are you, Brad?
Shockingly, I'm never better. And yourself?
Mate, I am shocked. That's how I am.
What's
Other
a
than that,
good
I'm never
word?
better.
Good for you. Bring
Okay,
in the early shock. Go ahead.
so this podcast is motivated partially by our previous podcast. We have one called The Legal System History. We have three called The Legal System Overlay, three parts. We also have one called Do You Know Your Rights? We have Universal Law. So we've got a whole background here. And what this has really driven to us to is let's say, a recognition that ultimately the legal system that we're experiencing is a bunch of totally man-made policies that are really in place just to serve the people who control the legal system. It pretends, it masquerades to be a lawful system, but it's really just a system of the in-group's policies that benefit them. Um, so what we're going to do in this podcast is we are going to lay out 10 axioms of natural law that is just the basis for how law should be. What do you think about that, Brad?
Yeah, it's yeah, I keep, you could have thrown the power of words in there, by the way. And we highlighted this word law, right? This word has been watered down, as you said, to mean that rules and policies made by men are laws, which they're not. And it's because of that watering down that makes this so hard for people to grasp, right? When you try to explain it to them for the first time, they get it after a while. But hopefully, this list of axioms will help people better understand what we're driving at, and we'll find out, I guess. But I think that's kind of the motivation behind putting this together, which was a great idea, by the way. Matt's idea.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Now, the way we're going to do it is we got, as I said, 10 axioms, and we're going to go through each one and spend a few minutes discussing it. Now, I just had this idea first. Just let me get your opinion, Brad. Do you think we should say one axiom and then talk about it, which of course we will, but do you also think we should at the beginning list all 10 axioms in a row just for, maybe someone doesn't have time to watch everything. Maybe they just want to hear the axioms. Do you want it all in one place, or does
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
spoil it?
No, I think it's fine to do it that way. Pack it all together in one, and then we'll come back around to them. I think that makes sense.
All right, this will make a nice short at some point as well. Axioms of natural law. One, each man and woman, individual, is sovereign and has free will. Free will is an individual's ability to act without external constraint. A law is an unchangeable fact of reality, knowable via experience. Individuals possess reason and the capacity to know natural law. Acting contrary to natural law constitutes wrongdoing. Violating another's free will is an act of wrongdoing. Delegation of wrongdoing is accessory to wrongdoing. The penalty for violating another's free will is, justly, the violation of the wrongdoer's free will. The only purpose of a just government is to protect individuals' rights and uphold natural law. A right is a liberty an individual requires to live free of government coercion in society.
Perfect.
You feel the cosmos shift in our favor just then, Brad? It's been declared.
It did, and it's so. We spent a lot of time on this, and it's so nice and tight. Obviously, all of this needs to be explained, which we'll do here in a bit. Yeah, this is precisely what the patriotic lawful gurus out there are trying to pound into people's brains, right? That this legal system and the government that it props up are breaking individual free will 24/7.
Mhm.
And all their ideas and all their narratives and all that they're pushing down our throats is always an attempt to violate individual free will more. And what better example than COVID in the previous 3 years? So
Alrighty.
this will be an interesting to talk through, but go ahead.
Shall we start with the first one then?
We shall.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Number one, each man and woman, an individual, is sovereign and has free will. Fewer words to understand there. What do you think of
Yeah.
those words, Brad?
Well, if you look at, and we touched on this in the Hidden Hand podcast, right? That's the second thing given to us, right, by God, if you want to look at it that way. But is that, after light, after the law of light, love, there's the law of free will. And it's really interesting. We've talked about this, touched it just briefly. It's this idea that some of our free will is going to be governed a little bit moving forward in time, if we believe some of the new age or spiritual stuff. And mainly that free will be to do stupid things that harm us, right? So that'll be an interesting to see that play out. But one other word I want to touch here, I talked to you the other day about it. This word sovereign. There is a legal definition for a sovereign, and it kind of implies, an individual that has land and defense systems, and the militia, and a way to live independently of any other things. So it's a tricky word, but we're just using the word, of course, as just the vocabulary definition of the word sovereign, right? Which is
Mhm.
basically a free individual.
Right.
So that would be my little additions here, but it's obvious if you stop and think about this, right? And you do have to stop and think about it, right? On the one hand, you'll get people who say, well, we don't have free will because we're not allowed to do this. And they'll come up with something that's restricted by the government, right?
Mhm.
And you see, there you go. That's your first pointer. That you actually would be allowed to do that if these things called governments weren't in place, right? And I guess
Okay.
that's the second bullet. But anyway, that'd be my thoughts on the first one here.
Right. Just to add some
Anything for
more
me?
to this sovereign idea,
Mm-hmm.
like when you're sovereign, it sounds like a monarch, like a king, right?
That's right.
One who possesses the highest authority without another wielding authority over them. And that I feel like that this idea is kind of like obfuscated by the existing reality where there's a king, like King Charles or something. He bosses everybody around, right?
Well,
But
used
what
to,
we're
right?
talking about is
Yeah,
not being the king of other people and bossing them around and telling them do this, do that. I'm the king of the castle. But you're the king of that slice of reality that is literally under your control, like over
that's
which no
right.
one else has claim. Like you can walk to your kitchen and make your breakfast, right? You're you're
Right.
the king of that part of reality.
Right. At the base minimum, right? And this is what we talked about the other day too, right? We have these kind of 5 words that are important if you want to handle things properly, and one of those words is property. So at the very basic level, your
Mhm.
body is your property,
Yeah,
and no other man or woman can tell you what you can or can't do with your property.
right. So you're the sovereign of your property.
That's right. You may have a car and a house and a family and a wife and children. Your children are your property from this sense of things, right? Until they're of age. That's different in different countries, by the way. But yeah, that everything that's under your control essentially is your property.
Right. So you're sovereign of what you have created, and you're sovereign of what you have willed into being.
Perfect.
I think it's important to address each man or woman. This applies to everybody. Like everybody is sovereign. Every single person is sovereign and has free will.
Right.
Simple. Any objections?
None for me.
That's why we call these axioms, because it shouldn't really be. You're going to have a tough time objecting to any of them. Okay. Shall we move on to number 2?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Free will is an individual's ability to act without external constraint. What do you think of that, Brad?
Right. And that's the implication there is the restraint from another man or woman. Right. Not restraint as in, this is, I've gotten into these conversations with people before. Well, my free will is I want to fly like a bird, but I'm restrained. I don't have wings. Right. So you're constrained. Right. So you have to make sure that, within the capabilities and capacity of a normal man or woman, that no other man or woman has the right via universal law to constrain you as long as you're not taking away another man or woman's free will.
Mm-hmm.
That's the essence of number 2. I don't think it's too complicated once we get past that idea of I want to be able to, jump over tall buildings like Superman. I'm constrained. My legs aren't strong enough. Go ahead.
I think there's something I can add to it. Like some people have concerns over whether, am I causing it or is it determined and I'm doing it, right? Like, and I'm being, just the universe is doing me, right?
I'm not
And
following.
it's not really important here. You can think whatever you want. But the point is that you get to act without external constraint. Like whether you think you're doing it or some God has planned it all out and you're just somehow playing a role, doesn't matter. Like if you're being externally constrained inside your property, inside your domain, inside your slice of reality, then the free will has been violated.
Correct.
So I think we're not referring specifically to the causation of action. We're only saying that free will is acting without external constraint.
That's a deep, difficult conversation. So yeah, let's not go there.
Right. There's a good section on free will in Objectivism by Leonard Peikoff, if anyone wants to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. So number 3, a law is an unchangeable fact of reality, brackets, knowable by, parentheses, knowable via experience. Right. This one's yours, Brad.
This is my baby. And right, if a law can be that, like people would automatically think of gravity as a law, right? Even though we've had some fun with that word, but we all agree what goes up must come down, right? It's a law, right? That's an unchangeable fact of reality for right now in this realm. Mm-hmm. And right, it's also an unchangeable fact of reality that I can say whatever I want, right? Nobody should be able to constrain me because they don't like what I'm saying, right? Hate speech is what they're trying right now. Right? They're trying to rewrite the Constitution of the United States is what they're pushing for, some of these politicians out there. Of course, they want to have hate speech laws, which they have in Britain now, by the way, which is quite a shock that's happening at the moment. Or that's a good example. You have the right to speak whatever you want to speak. Right? No one can stop you. And I always use that in travel, right? It's a law that I can stand up and walk or bicycle or drive or boat or fly anywhere that I want to. Right? It's only some other man or woman has to come in and constrain me if I don't have the right documents or a passport or some other set of rules that these things called governments have created up that constrains my ability to travel at will. Yeah?
Okay, I'll throw a spanner in the works.
Hit me.
So you've said a law is an unchangeable fact of reality. This wouldn't be the mind-blown zone if we didn't amicably argue with each other, right?
Absolutely. Hit me.
I think that's one of the best things about our podcast, that like we actually argue with each other, but we're not sad about it.
That's right. It's important. No, that's what makes it good. So hit me. What are you going to come at me with?
It is something I've said to you before, but in the novel Darth Plagueis or Plagueis, I'm not sure what it's called, Star Wars novel. Darth Sidious's mentor, Darth Plagueis, murders someone, and he's murdering him, and the guy says, "You can't do this. You can't do this." And he says, "That's where you're wrong. The fact that I'm doing it means that I can." That's
Mm-hmm.
like kind of like part of the Sith philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone does wrong to someone else, doesn't the fact that they're doing it imply, and I'm not, by the way, the way I'm presenting this isn't like, I already know partially what Brad's going to say, right? I don't fully believe in what I'm saying here. It's important to raise this.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't the fact that they're doing it, violating someone's free will, mean that it's within the law?
That's right. Because you can do it, then obviously it's a universal law that you can do that.
Okay, well, if you're saying you can do it, well, how do I ever complain that someone's violating my free will and say that this is unlawful?
You as in the dead guy, or you as an onlooker?
Well, anybody, like any single person, like if I'm walking down the street and then a police officer comes along and violates my free will,
Mm-hmm.
and then I say that's unlawful. How can he not just say, no, no, it's lawful? I mean, it happened. So it's a fact of reality. So it was lawful, and therefore it's fine.
Well, we have axiom number 8, right? Which you've written down. We made a point of making that, right? And he's broken the golden rule, right? You used the word murder too. You didn't say kill. So that, of course, murder means, unlawful killing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah, I mean, he used his free will to kill the other guy, right? So it was within the capability of that person, but by doing that, he took away the other person's free will, right? So now he has to pay the price.
Mm-hmm. And so I think what I'm driving at here is that law isn't a list of things that you can't do.
That's right.
Right?
It's the opposite. It's the opposite, Matt.
Right.
It's more like a list of things you can do.
Right. Law is what can be done, and if there are repercussions, then there are repercussions. But law is what is valid, not necessarily wrong or right, but law is that which is possible.
Right. It's almost the exact opposite, which is the legal system, right? There's an inversion. That's why they don't have laws, because they're doing the exact opposite. They're writing 93 million statutes, codes, and ordinances and acts that tell you what you can't do.
Yeah. Yeah. Ban all these things that you can't do.
Pretty much, right? That's pretty much what it's all about.
Right. And don't get confused at this point that we're saying, well, you can do wrong things. Well, you can do them.
Yeah, you can.
But clearly they're like only if you are to be punished and have your free will violated in return.
Right. And, this, I may be branching off too far, so I'll keep it brief, but the consequences of violating someone else's free will is a karmic blowback, whether you get caught and thrown in prison or whatever, right? For it, you're going to pay the price, right? Because you put that energy out into the universe. So it's going to come back to roost.
Right.
Well, there's no getting away with it. In the ultimate violation of free will.
So definitely definitely got to wrap your comprehension around these things as we go forward.
Well, if I may, the beauty of natural law and universal law is that you don't really need to know it like from a intellectual standpoint.
Right.
And it's a given as per your experience of living.
Yeah. Like it doesn't need to be written down. Like laws don't that we specifically wrote here, like knowable via experience. Like it doesn't need to be written down at all.
That's right. And it's important. I don't know if I'm sure I covered this at some point, but I should add, right, that the common law, which there's a million different confusing ideas about that floating around out there, but the common law that wasn't written down either.
Right.
Right. So somehow humanity operated for 1,000 years, right? Or but really since the beginning of time. But let's just say, during English common law, let's just give it a 1,000-year span, right? And that was carried over into American common law and Australian common law. And there was some guys had compiled some books about interesting, their observations about it and how certain things were handled. But it was always very simple, is that one person accused another person of some form of wrongdoing, right? There didn't need to be any statutes about what you had to do with it and prosecutors and DAs cutting deals. And the two people settled their dispute, right, in front of a referee, a judge, and a jury. And that was how disputes were settled. Everybody knows when someone does something wrong to somebody else, right? Don't need to write it down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. You listen. Yep. Go ahead.
All right. Number 4. Individuals possess reason and the capacity to know natural law. And I think this one's so important because there's currently a big pretending going on amongst, most people in this who am I to know philosophy that they saturate their lives with. And they pretend that, I'm not an expert. And what they're doing there is they're delegating their reason to people who they just kind of pretend without knowing one way or another are experts, right? So the legal system. So they delegate the thinking and they just say, oh, the legal system's written it down. I'm sure there were lots of smart people who came before me, so I'm just going to look the other way on everything that's happening. Who am I to know? But we assert axiomatically that all individuals possess reason and the capacity to know natural law, and nothing is in their way.
Right. All people of normal intelligence, right? That word capacity is a very important word in both the lawful and the legal system. And of course, some people, don't have the capacity, like someone who's deemed insane or, mentally incapable, right? Those would be people who would lack the capacity.
Maybe a better word even would be potential.
Probably, because it's an important, has a very specific meaning in the legal system. And when you hire an attorney, by the way, you're saying, I lack the capacity. I'm an imbecile.
Yes.
That's exactly what that signals to the legal system. And of course, we are all, if we don't have a bar card and a law degree, then we are ignorant to the rules of legal procedure, right? And legalese.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need any of that to come to lawful, just decisions.
Right. Knowing whether a certain action violates free will or not is, incredibly easy. It takes a very large intellect to not be able to instantly know whether something violates natural law and free will or not.
Right. It's the golden rule. It always comes back to that. Geez, would I want someone to do that to me? Right.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is no,
and masochists need not apply, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's always little weird exceptions things, but yeah.
Alrighty. Number 5. Acting contrary to natural law constitutes wrongdoing. So what we're doing here is we're introducing this word wrongdoing. as kind of like a central concept that covers all acts that are contrary to natural law, or violate free will, etc. Right? So if you act contrary to natural law, that's wrongdoing. Boom.
Well, yeah, you almost can't act contrary to natural. You could break, right, the natural law and suffer the consequences, right? But this is definitely acting against another's free will, which is what the whole legal system is really supposed to be about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is
So
that
do you think this one here is not entirely accurate as we've stated it? Do you think we could have said this one better?
I think, yeah, we may need to rewrite that one a little bit. Yeah, it's really,
It must be
really,
like acting contrary to free will, or maybe we just need to skip that one altogether, and it's like violating another's free will
yeah,
is wrongdoing. Maybe
which
that's how
is
it's meant to be.
number 6. Yeah, that's the right way to say it.
Okay, so here's
Acting,
what we're gonna do. We're gonna take acting contrary to natural law constitutes wrongdoing, and we're gonna take violating another's free will as an act of wrongdoing. And I think all that we're gonna do is just delete 5. That's it, right?
well, I mean, you could say if you put that back, I could
Mm-hmm.
look at that. Acting contrary to natural law
Mm-hmm.
results in consequences.
But I think that with the way it's already been said is that natural law already involves the consequences of certain actions.
You could say that. Yeah. I was just
Yeah.
trying to make it into a thing, but yeah, it really doesn't fit.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put a little strike through on that one. And we're going to proceed with violating another's free will is like constitutes wrongdoing. Right? That's how we're going to go.
Yep.
Okay. Violating another's free will constitutes wrongdoing. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, that is precisely what breaking the law from man's point of view is all about.
Mm-hmm. Right. So whenever you have a claim against another person that they've done you wrong, uh, the whole central thing that you're talking about there is wrongdoing, right?
That's
You would
right.
say they're the wrongdoer. They've done wrong to you. They've committed an act of wrongdoing. So this is how you would talk about it in a lawful framework.
Yeah, you can turn anything like defamation, right? Had some dealings with recently, right? You can call that wrongdoing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have to use the official legal term. Libel is written and slander is spoken, right? Like whatever. It just doesn't matter. It's wrongdoing, right? You could boil everything back to that when you're making a claim against somebody. But
Yeah, and
I
if
want
you
to,
go and pursue something like defamation, well, that's a legal term. And that's got a whole book written about it in the legal system. And
yeah,
you're going to be washed up in all their definitions and what's what and all that. And I mean, it's all just, I wouldn't say it's all nonsense, but it's like, it's all in support of nonsense.
well, you're going to be trapped in case law too. So the judge
Right.
is going to look to Honorable Cornwallis's decision in 1892 and say, "Oh, no one's overturned this one yet, so we're sticking with it." You got all that stuff to deal with. But an important point I want to make here is that uh, a fictional entity called government, right, requiring the people to pay income taxes by threat of violence and force, right, is violating everybody's free will.
Right.
Unless you want to pay taxes, go ahead, right? But most people, given the choice, wouldn't pay them. So, and this is the basis of humanity's problems, and we'll do a podcast someday on this. But all the angst in the world is based on these violations of free will that they just seem so we don't know any different that we don't even see it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't even notice it. you just go, oh, well, I guess we got to pay taxes, but that's a violation of free will.
Yeah, and the
And
reason it's a violation of free will is that the product of your creative force is your property, right?
that's right. Your labor,
So
right?
you are
Energy.
the recipient of the benefit of your property. And if you work and pour your creative energies into something, you deserve what you've created. But what they've come along and done is that, your creative stuff gets translated into this like token, this currency that they've created, for example, a dollar. And then they've said that you owe a portion of the dollars to them and they get to have the dollars. I think at this point, if anyone still believes that taxation is like just or something like that, it's time for a intervention.
Well, it's a complicated subject. When we get right down to this, we have to talk about a bunch of different things. But I think, I mean, it's easy, but it's complicated, right? People think that their tax dollars are going to help, people in need, right? That's the basic idea that people have, and protecting us and all the rest. But, you can, if you want to apply the rules, right, of any of these things, is this, an act of violating free will? You can just think for yourself. Like, well, what if I decided I want to create a neighborhood protection and watch service, right, for people who live on my block? Do I have the right to go around and knock on everybody's door and say, hey, you got to pay
Shake
me
'em
$10
down.
a month? Yeah, like a mob rack, shakedown.
There's a lot of problems around here. I mean, who's to say you ain't gonna get, running into some trouble? You're gonna need some protection, you know what I'm saying?
It's perfect. It's perfect. So yeah, so you can see right there. No, I can't do that, and we'll get into you know in the next point here. But I was just wanting to make that wanting to make that simple point. Like telling you that you have to sign up for Social Security or go into the draft if a big war comes along. So forcing me to sacrifice my life, right, against my free will, right, is a massive. It is the ultimate violation of free will. You don't have a choice. You're between 18 and 35. You're a healthy male. You gotta go fight this war for us.
I mean,
Right?
that's pretty much conscription is like the ultimate wrongdoing, really,
It is. It is.
on a
No
societal
man,
level.
right? No, and no man has the right to do that. And the irony, of course, is that all our governments are corporations, so they're not real. They're not. They're dead entities. But who could you ever come after? Right? Like you could never come after the president. He's got immunity according to the legal system. But you get the point. And there's just a million other things. Like if I want to fly to Australia tomorrow, and I don't have a passport, like who's in my way? American government, the Australian government, right? So there's your law violators.
Hmm. And not
Anyway,
just the government. I mean, well, unless it depends how you're using the term government, but the frontline workers, the people standing right there on the border, like they're doing it.
well, yeah, they work for
Oh,
the
I'm just
government,
following orders.
right? Customs agents, right? They work for
Customs
the
agents.
government,
I mean, they're in
right?
total violation of free will.
Right. Good luck convincing them of that. But yeah, it's just again, we're just making obvious examples that it's all these little things that's and there's a million other things, right? These things start to add up. You need a fishing license, and you need a driver's license, and you need to register your car every year, and right, this goes on and on and on. Like, yeah, I don't want to register my car. No, someone's making you register your car. So it's an endless list of violations of free will.
So that brings us to one that's going to make some people
Hmm.
uh,
Glitch.
have some pretty big revelations and start a existential
Mhm.
crisis of soul searching,
Yeah.
asking, "What have I done? God forgive me, what have I done?"
Mhm.
Delegation of wrongdoing is accessory to wrongdoing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, again, we just and I kind of brought it up in the last point that if I can't tell somebody, right, just me, Brad, I can't go out on the street and say, hey, I need 10 of you to come fight this war for me, and I'm making you do it because you live on my block or whatever. I can't do that, right? I can't ask these people to step into the line of fire. So if I can't do it, then I can't vote for somebody who can do it. I can't give somebody else a right that I don't have. Right?
So the majorities that have voted for governments and voted for policies that are enforced by armed militaries and policy enforcement agencies are accessory to wrongdoing.
That's right. And so we're all doing it to ourselves. Well, those of us who vote, that would not be me. But yeah, if you're voting, you're part of the problem.
And we forgive you.
Of course we do. I mean, it's total in a total state of ignorance, right? Unwittingness. But it's just because you haven't been educated on this and you haven't thought it through, which is what we're trying to do with these axioms. Think it through, right? If I can't murder somebody, I certainly can't vote for somebody and give them the right to murder somebody. Right?
Right. Right. I mean, if you voted for George Bush and then George Bush, well, not George Bush. I mean, George Bush obviously just a puppet, right? But if you voted for the regime associated with George Bush, and then that regime went and dropped bombs on Iraq and killed innocent civilians, then delegation of wrongdoing is accessory to wrongdoing.
Oh, it's going on right now. If you voted for Biden, then he's in congressmen and senators, and they're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine to bomb Russians, then you've just done the same thing. And even if it isn't an American pushing the button, right? We're just sending them the bombs and the planes. Yeah?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you want to simplify it all, if you support this thing called government, then you're an accessory to wrongdoing.
Yep.
No matter who it is.
Well, I wouldn't put it like this thing called government. I would, like, if you want to talk about the manifested governments that exist now, sure.
Yeah. Everything that we know of today as government, right? Not doing what it's supposed to do, but doing a billion other things that it's not supposed to be doing.
Right.
Anyway, I think we hit that one good enough. Yeah.
Yep. No hard feelings. Okay. Number 8, the penalty for violating another's free will is justly the violation of the wrongdoer's free will. Just let me explain the grammar here. The penalty for violating another's free will is justly the violation of the wrongdoer's free will. So is justly the violation. That means that the violation of the wrongdoer's free will is just. Okay, that's what that means.
Right.
What do you reckon on that one, Brad?
Yeah, it's equal and opposite reaction. You want to do it from the sciencey, physicsy standpoint. What you send out, you get back from a more metaphysical, religious standpoint. Right? Life is an echo. So, a lot of people will hear this and think, okay, well, if that guy murdered somebody, but he doesn't get caught, then he never, got the just return. But it's not always in this lifetime that these sorts of things happen. And, at this point, I can't keep tiptoeing around that idea. There are multiple lifetimes, and you have to. It's actually, if you want to know the ultimate universal law, right, really the ultimate natural law, is that all the energy we send out, we have to neutralize it ourselves because we're the generator of it. So it comes back to us to be neutralized. You follow?
All too well, unfortunately.
Yeah. So if you send out hate, you get hate back. If you send out murder, you get murder back. You can't. There's no way out of it. Right? You created it. You have to expunge it. That's why Jesus and Buddha and Krishna said to go out and be kind and loving and generous and so forth, right? Because that's the energies you're going to get back, right? So you get nice rebounds. If you do nasty stuff like violate people's free will, then you have nasty rebounds. And that is the essence of the natural law.
So if you're violating another's free will, then you can count on your free will being violated.
Mm-hmm. And if you think back to the previous bullet point, I mean, who knows how that manifests itself, right? Like that you're voting for a giant global corporate mafia called government that is in the business of violating people's free will, and you're encouraging them with your vote. Who knows how that comes back? But it just comes back in little more and more senses of having our free will violated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're irritated. We have our little things that we're irritated about, but it just keeps coming back. So what's out there is a result of our ignorance, effectively. Literally ignorance. And, the ultimate maximum of law, as far as I'm concerned, right? And this, you can cut through, right? Legal, common law, natural law, all of them. The number one lawful axiom is ignorance of the law is no defense. And that's no more true than in natural, universal law. Right? It doesn't matter that you didn't know these things, right? You still are gonna pay the penalty. Right?
Uh-huh.
That's
Shall we proceed
universal
on?
law. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Second last. The only purpose of a just government is to protect individual rights and uphold natural law. Go on, Brad.
Yes, I mean that's. I think I broke into that in the beginning, and I realized it was one of the axioms. But yeah, that's the gist of the lawful and patriotic groups out there. Is like that was the purpose of certainly the United States government that was set up in 1776, 1789. Is that the purpose of government was to protect or preserve individual rights and property. Right? That was really its only function. And anything beyond that, it has nothing to do with it.
And you know what? Even like, you take the concept government, right? Like the conception of a concept like government, we shouldn't have to write just government. Like, it's implied that a government would be just. So all this stuff that is not just in government, that's not government. That's
tyranny.
Tyranny? What did you say?
Yeah, tyranny.
Tyranny. I mean, it's government and tyranny.
Authoritarianism, however you like it. I have a problem with the word, right? We talked about this. I've looked at everybody's attempts to whitewash it, but government in Latin, gubern is the control, and mentes is mind. Mind
I think
control.
that's fair.
I've never heard a better argument. How could that even be wishy-washy or unclear? Like what? This big giant thing that every country has, right, called government, and we don't. There's another meaning to it in Latin somehow. Doesn't make any sense. So I'd like to expunge the word from our vocabulary if I could. But it's clear that there does need to be some entity that manages things for a collective group of entities, right? Like states, for example.
Well, the idea is that, not everyone wants to spend their time protecting their rights, right? They want to delegate that to other people who want to be in that business and have their creativity flow into that. So it's just a trader principle, laissez-faire kind of thing that you just delegate rights protection and natural law protection to other people. And then they're just meant to do that. You just pay them and they do it.
Right. Way back in the day that we had peace officers, right? When people are thinking of their, home in person kind of an idea, right? As far as protecting your rights.
Well, now we have policy officers. I'm not sure
Right.
people somehow struggle to see the relationship between the word police and policy. It's like just one slight difference in pronunciation, and people suddenly think that police officers are there to
Yeah,
uphold natural law or something or protect your rights. It's like they're there to enforce policies. That's what they
that's
are.
right. Right. And we had justices of the peace instead of judges. Right. They just slip this in. Oh, 50 years, they say, oh, judge and justice of the peace, it means the same thing. And then one day they were just all judges. No more justices of
Right.
the peace. Peace officer,
Right.
police officer. It's the same basic thing. And then one day
Oh,
there's no more
don't
peace
worry too much
officers.
about words. Don't worry about too much about words. Don't get
Right.
caught up in words.
That's how they pull the trick. Yeah, this is a hard one for people because they don't know any different. And they think we need the FDA and the FBI and NASA and the CDC and the SEC. We need them to govern and regulate, and control. So no one, I contend that they are the source of the problems, not even though they show us a couple problems they resolve every now and then, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like the mob shakedown thing, right? Like if you don't pay the local boys whatever $100 to protect your dry cleaning racket, then they send someone over to rob your store some night, right? So now you think you need to pay for it. So that's kind of the way the government operates. It's not tricky. Anyway, a good point.
Well, and then they could just come along and take credit for stuff, or like just pretend that they did good stuff, or make up stories and pretend that they resolve stories or something like that. Like Barack Obama comes out and he's like, "Yeah, that Osama bin Laden guy. We got him." Like, yeah, bro.
Yeah, we
Okay.
got him.
And everyone's like, "Whoa, the Barack Obama regime, they got Osama bin Laden." It's like, okay, bro, can I see a video proof of that? Like, sounds more like a made up story.
It is definitely a made up story. Yeah.
So if
Even
they're,
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was
No,
just
you
going to
go.
say, even my mom knew that was the most ridiculous story way back whenever that was, 2012 or whatever, when that happened. She's like, that didn't happen at all, did it? I said, no, just like the whole thing didn't happen. They made a movie about it. He
Yeah.
shot his casket off of against Muslim law, right, off of a Navy ship, and it's just all complete garbage. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, if the purpose of a just government is to protect individual rights and uphold natural law, um, even if we disagree, well, not disagree, but even if there's some question about this word government, whatever, just the entity to which we're referring,
Mm-hmm.
you really do have uh, law enforcement, like armed law enforcement. You have border protection, and you have uh, what would you call it? The justice system, right? The justice. You have justice, all right? You do have those three functions. Like those are the things that you delegate the protection of your rights to. People who work in those categories.
Mm-hmm.
And they're supposed to all fully understand these axioms and what rights are and how they come about. And they're supposed to understand fully natural law. And the people that are in government at the moment, they don't know the first thing about this. They don't know
Well,
anything
yeah.
about this at all.
Look at the way they treat us, right? Like they don't even realize, right, that they work for me, right? I'm their boss, so I need to be
I've had some
given.
dealings recently, and they treat me
Yeah,
um, like some annoyance that
yeah,
needs to be pushed down and just stopped from bothering us.
right.
Like
Every, every
we'll get to it. Like we don't care, but apparently we need to do it, and we'll get to it on our own time. And until then, buzz off. We don't care about you.
that's right.
That's it.
Yeah, that's how they've all been educated and trained. They are the bosses and we're the peons.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is the exact opposite of how it's written down. Literally the exact opposite.
Okie Last one. A right is a liberty an individual requires to live free of government coercion in society.
Hmm.
So, therefore, the concept right refers to all those liberties, those freedoms that you require to fully live, right? To pursue happiness, to operate and own your property, to thrive, to have like full liberty, like everything they refer to in that first part of the US Constitution, right? So any any sort of freedom that you require to do all that stuff, that's a right. That's what a right is. The word right refers to all of those things. What do you think of that, Brad?
Yeah, I mean it's and you know we have all kinds of problems with this word here too, right? This civil rights, civil liberties, right? Those are made up. Those are privileges and benefits given to you by the government.
Mm-hmm.
So those are basically substandard by a long shot over your natural rights. Right? But when people hear this idea of right, they think, oh, it's my constitutional right, it's my civil right.
Mm-hmm.
And no, those are far weaker than your rights
Mm-hmm.
that we're expressing here as an axiom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Your
it's so
rights
important.
exist by the fact that there's a society and they don't need to be written down on any constitution or any document at all, ever.
Yep. And that's in our Bill of Rights. It said we just laid out, we just wanted to spell out some of the most important ones, but we retain all the rest of our rights that aren't all
Mm-hmm.
herein written, which are numerous.
And that's
Right.
why it
And
says on documents you'll find it says all rights reserved.
yeah, you're supposed to sign everything with that at the bottom of your signature. If you're playing the lawful patriotic guru game.
That's a good tip. Thanks.
Yep. Without prejudice, all rights reserved. And then and
And
it's
just to
just
be clear, you go ahead, Brad, and then I'll say something.
just going to say it's just in the sense that if you ever got into some weird legal problem, right? It's like a defense. They can't strip you of any of your rights. You know, that may have been wording in that document that suggested that they could. Anyway, go ahead.
This word coercion, I think it's like coercion is like force. Uh, and you know, it's kind of like threat. It's the threat of force, right? It's that if you don't, you're gonna have your will violated,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
Coercion is like you'd better do this policy. You better conform to this policy, or we're gonna violate your rights. We're gonna violate your free will.
Yeah. Or we
That's what
might.
coercion is.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, there you go. There you have it. The axiom, not the, it's
Hmm.
not the axioms of natural law. It's axioms of natural law.
Yeah. And if this can start to sink into your consciousness a little bit, right? Just think about it. It isn't to set up an adversarial relationship with the government and all the people who work for the government that you
Right.
interact with, right? Like that's a terrible
Right.
idea. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's a way for you to embody and emanate which you truly are.
Mhm.
Because all these violations and coercions and policies and statutes and codes and acts are all, this big giant weight that's tricked you into not being who and what you truly are. Right? It's being timid. It's being worried. It's being afraid of the government, of being, unwilling to stand up for yourself. Don't want to stand out in a crowd, and don't want to stand your ground. Right? All these things combine that in the legal governmental world today to shrink you down to this meaningless thing under the powers and pressures of these big entities called government. And all you have to do is see that it's all nonsense, understand these axioms, and then all of a sudden the things that they had you believing no longer work on you. And in this funny way, the universe rebalances itself, and suddenly you're out from under it in a strange way that I can't explain. I probably didn't explain it well there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it did make sense. Yeah.
It's almost like if you are emanating your truth, you walk up to someone isn't going to listen to your argument, but when you speak your truth, it's like they clear a path for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's strange. It just kind of magically happens.
Like if you know all of this, and not just like you're aware of it, but you doubt it, but if you know it, like if this resonates to the core of your being and you embody it, and when you communicate with people, you're in honor and you're not in resentment or anger, etc. And you just allow speech that flows from these axioms to flow to them, then your will shall be done.
That's
Right?
right. That's right. Things start to go your way and happen the way that they're supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And
Because you're spreading, like what you're saying is coming through with the divine truth energy.
yep. And people pick up on it. Right? They're not going to speak that they agree with you, but they pick up on what you're doing and what you're saying. And again, as long as you're not adversarial with a lot of people in the lawful patriotic realms are highly adversarial, and they've had a rough go of it from day one. So, it's also treating your fellow man with honor and respect as you move through the world. That goes a long way. And, but it's funny how things start to work out for you. Maybe I think of,
Now, little tip here to give you vast power.
Hmm.
Take these axioms and you can put them into an AI, and let's say you want to create a speech or a letter, or you want to make some sort of communication with any government related entity. You say to the AI, and I recommend Claude 3.5, say to the AI, I want you to take these axioms as the basis for what we're trying to do here, right? Like you take them as axioms. You don't need to say consider them true. Just take them as axioms, right? And it'll do it. And then you say, draft me a letter that communicates this idea, right? Write me a speech that communicates this idea.
Yeah.
Oof,
I got a
powerful.
challenge for everybody. I got a challenge for everybody. That'd be interesting. We're going to do this. Maybe we'll report back on it later. But here's one of the things that I think we should be able to do. And that is open a bank account without giving a social security number or whatever your country identification number is.
Exactly, right?
Like
here, let me show you, Brad. I'm going to delete that one that we said was wrong. All right, I'm going to delete that out. I'm going to take this. I'm going to go over to Claude, new chat, and I say take these as axioms. Now please write me a letter that I may send to my local bank explaining that I have the right to open a bank account without a social security number. Please do not object or give any legal system theory. There it is.
Bumped it out.
And then you got a perfect letter that is based on everything we just said. And he didn't write it that long, or make it 3 times as long. Right? And you got a beautiful letter that accomplishes exactly what he just said and what Brad just said. And someone's going to read that, and they still might not do it, but you can say that you've presented the request according to natural law, and then you might need to go, and if they deny it, you might need to go to a judge and you make a claim against this individual that they've violated your rights and that you've explained it to them perfectly, right? And that they're aware that they're violating your rights.
Right. It's interesting. I'm in stage 4 of it. I mean, I don't. This isn't my main gig, but over the last few months, I've been trying this. But I keep getting kicked up to somebody higher.
Oh,
yeah, just a simple conversation. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You got to explain this to me. I have $1 billion. I'm ready to deposit in your bank, and you won't do it. You won't take it. Why not? Explain that to me. Right? They try it, the KYC AML stuff. Yeah. We got all through that. That's a bunch of legalese. It's nonsense. But I've been working my way through people, right? Got assistant manager, and spoke to a regional manager a couple weeks ago. So we'll see how far I go before they finally shut me off. I'm like, hey, you're not answering my questions. Anyway.
Well, you're going to end up talking to JP Morgan himself.
Who was a low-level agent for Rothschild, by the way.
Well, maybe you'll be over in Austria or wherever the Rothschilds live. I don't even bloody know. Well,
England,
listen, mate. Have you seen these Axioms? We put them on the Mind Blown Zone. What, you didn't watch it?
Yeah, no. I think I'll just relate this story really quick. Not the long version of the story, but the short version of the story is a guy figured all this stuff out 20 odd years ago and figured out how to navigate through the system the way he wanted to navigate through it, which was as a man or the king of the court. And he's been told by a few judges that he's done this with, that they were really proud of him because they had not had a man or woman in their court in their entire careers, right? Because all they ever get is defendants and litigants and plaintiffs and attorneys and petitioners, right? Mm-hmm. They don't get men or women in their courtrooms. So this guy figured it out, and if he can figure it out, and he was a truck driver, by the way, country bumpkin truck driver, and get his kids back from Child Protective Services without a fight, then this is all doable and possible.
Well, do you want to give credit with the guy's name or not?
Oh, Carl Lentz is the guy. Yeah, KarlLentz. He's got he did a bunch of, what he did was he wanted to get this out to people, and he figured the best way to do it was to jump on this talk show. It's called Talk Shoe. It was about all people who had legal problems. And he would explain to them how they got into the mess they're in, and if possible, how they could get out or how not to fall into the same trap again. And over the course of, hundreds of hours of conversations, you start to understand what he's driving at. And effectively, he doesn't let them push him around because they're men and women and he's a man, and no man has the right to violate the rights and property of another man. Mm-hmm. That's how he conducts himself. So it's doable. It's totally, this is all about taking your power back. Right? The theme of our podcast and course, right? That's what you're doing. If you don't want to do this, then you're agreeing to give your power away. So I kind of lay that out as a bit of a challenge to the people who listen. It's too complicated. I didn't go to law school. I can't figure this all out. No, you can. It's not hard. Matt's doing it too right now with some medical stuff. So we're chipping away. You still there, Matt?
Chipping away. And
Okay.
to make this a movement, what I recommend is for anyone listening to do as I said, is to take the axioms, put them into AI, and have it generate the words for you, and make communication with these people in government. And let's have natural law ooze like liquid gold into the veins of this corrupt creature and transmute it into all the glory that it could be.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, if you want to boil down the whole New Age, Novo Gaia, everything movements into one thing, it's literally us returning to our sovereignty is how it's done.
Restoring honor to our societies.
That would be an end result. That'd be an incidental to us returning to our sovereignty. Understanding that no man or woman or agency or government can do these things that violate my free will.
Okie dokie. Well, I think we smashed it. Hope everyone liked that. Anything you want to close on, Brad?
Nope, that's it. It's a good one.
Right on. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you love this one. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Good
See you
luck,
next time.
everybody.